Today, the mystery surrounding the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370.
The story continues to unfold. And new evidence now suggests that the aircraft could have been deliberately downed by its pilot.
Thousands of air flights are completed each day without making headline news. However, sadly, once in a while, a particular flight will get on the news for the wrong reasons, including the infamous Malaysian Flight 370. Investigators have run into a brick wall in their investigation into the disaster that claimed many lives. However, scientists recently made some terrifying new discoveries about the ill-fated flight that changes everything we know about the incident. Stay tuned as we bring you details of the latest shocking discovery of the Malaysian Flight 370 disaster. The ill-fated flight, often simply referred to as MH370, was a scheduled international passenger flight operated by Malaysian Airlines. The destination none other than the bustling city of Beijing, the capital of China. Imagine it, over 200 passengers on board, ready for either a familiar homeland's embrace or the thrilling exploration of a foreign land. More specifically, we had 227 passengers from 14 different nations and 12 Malaysian crew members, a multicultural assembly of humanity flying across the vast expanse of ocean and land. On the 8th of March 2014, MH370 departed from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, located in Malaysia's bustling capital city. This was a routine flight, one that took off at the stroke of midnight, with the passengers and crew settling in for the approximately 5,570 kilometers journey to Beijing. The expected flight duration just 5 hours and 34 minutes. Little did they know they were embarking on a journey that would stir the world. At the helm, we had two experienced pilots, Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid. Together, they commanded the state-of-the-art Boeing 777-200ER aircraft. Now, this was no ordinary plane. The Boeing 777 series is known for its impressive safety record and advanced technology. It's the long-haul flight workhorse of many airlines, respected and loved by both passengers and crew worldwide. As MH370 ascended into the night sky, everything seemed to be business as usual. The Boeing 77 steadily climbed to its cruising altitude, slicing through the clouds like a knife through butter. The passengers would have been making themselves comfortable, some nestling into their seats for a nap, others perhaps watching a movie or listening to music. Then, at 1:19 Malaysian Standard Time, a routine handover from Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control to Ho Chi Minh City Air Traffic Control in Vietnam was supposed to happen. And here's where things start to get really eerie. The last verbal communication from the flight occurred when either the captain or the first officer said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. These ordinary words, a standard part of pilot-controller lingo, would soon haunt the world as the last known words from MH370. But let's scour the last moments of the MH370 flights for clues as to what happened inside the aircraft on this day. As we've already discussed, MH370 was on a scheduled journey from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on the 8th of March 2014, carrying 239 souls on board. The flight took off without any glitches but disappeared from the radar screens, only to leave an enigma that the world is still struggling to decode today. As we venture into the final minutes of contact with MH370, it's important to place ourselves within the confines of the cockpit of the state-of-the-art Boeing 777-200ER. Captain Zahiri Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid were at the helm, two experienced professionals ready to guide their passengers safely to their destination. At around 1:01 Malaysian Standard Time, flight MH370 was soaring at an altitude of 35,000 feet. At this point, the aircraft's ACARS, or Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, transmitted its regular half-hourly data report. Everything was routine, the report clean, not a whisper of trouble on board the 777. Around 01:07 a.m., the ACARS transmitted what would be its final message. The transmission indicated that everything was operating normally and the expected next update was due at 1:37 a.m. Unfortunately, this expected transmission would never arrive. However, the most haunting moment came at approximately 01:19 a.m. as the aircraft was about to transition from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace. A voice from the cockpit communicated with the air traffic controller ATC in Kuala Lumpur. The seemingly mundane phrase, "Good night, Malaysia 370, took on a chilling significance in the hours, days, and years to follow. This was the point where the aircraft was due for a handover from Kuala Lumpur ATC to Ho Chi Minh City ATC. It was a procedural communication, a farewell from one control center before a hello to another, but this time the hello would never come. Just 2 minutes later at 1:21 a.m., MH370's transponder stopped transmitting. The transponder, a device crucial for providing information to ground radar about the aircraft's speed, position, and altitude, went silent. MH370 had, for all intents and purposes, become invisible to secondary radar. The aircraft was now only visible on primary radar, which only gives a rough indication of position and altitude. The transponder's silence created a gap in the relay of crucial data, transforming the state-of-the-art Boeing 777-200ER into a phantom in the night sky. At approximately 1:30 a.m., the Ho Chi Minh City ATC started its attempt to establish contact with MH370, only to be met with radio silence. Repeated calls yielded no response from the aircraft. A veil of uncertainty began to descend upon those tracking the aircraft as they tried to grapple with the sudden disappearance. The final electronic whisper from MH370 came at 08:19 a.m. when a log-on request was made to the Inmarsat satellite, an automated process, almost like the aircraft was reaching out one last time. It's the last digital heartbeat of MH370, a ghostly electronic echo that would baffle investigators for years to come. These were the ominous final minutes before the disappearance of MH370, a period marked by routine processes punctuated by an eerie silence that would come to define one of aviation's greatest mysteries. We're left with only fragmented clues, a digital breadcrumb trail leading into the void. But what about non-verbal communications? Modern aircraft like the Boeing 777 are equipped with systems that continuously transmit data, sort of a digital howdy-do to the ground control. While the last automated communication, the final handshake from MH370 to the Inmarsat satellite, happened at 08:19 MYT, more than 7 hours after takeoff. But somewhere between the last verbal communication and the final non-verbal one, MH370 disappeared. It vanished from radar screens like a ghost plane, leaving no trace behind. The transponder, the device that sends information about the aircraft to ground radar, was silent. This sudden silence left a void, a mystery that would grip the world for years to come. Despite extensive search efforts that spanned many years and covered vast swathes of the Indian Ocean, the final resting place of MH370 remains undiscovered. The few pieces of debris confirmed to be from the plane turned up thousands of miles away, and they brought more questions than answers. With every new finding, the mystery seemed to deepen, the puzzle pieces refusing to fit into a clear picture. When the realization set in that the aircraft was missing, the first 24 hours saw a relatively local search initiated around the aircraft's last known location over the South China Sea. But it soon became clear that this was not a typical search and rescue operation. As the scale of the mystery around MH370's disappearance became apparent, the search effort rapidly expanded. 26 countries joined hands in an unprecedented show of international cooperation. These nations contributed a wide variety of assets, including ships, aircraft, and submarines, coupled with manpower and advanced technologies. The primary search area stretched over the southern Indian Ocean, a body of water that is known for its treacherous conditions and extreme depths, posing a significant challenge. The search area was roughly 1.7 million square miles, which is comparable to the size of Australia. It was like trying to find a needle in a gigantic, ever-moving haystack in the middle of the night. To tackle this challenge, search teams used satellite data, aircraft performance data, and advanced technology to narrow down the search area. This led to the seventh arc, a curved line in the southern Indian Ocean that represented the most likely area where the aircraft could have ended its flight. One of the primary tools in this search was a device called a towed pinger locator, designed to detect signals from the aircraft's flight data and cockpit voice recorders, the so-called black boxes. But with a battery life of about 30 days, the race against time added another layer of tension to this already Herculean task. And so when the acoustic pings went silent, the search operation took a different approach, deploying autonomous underwater vehicles and vessels equipped with side-scan sonar, multi-beam echo sounders, and video cameras. They were scanning the ocean floor, creating a detailed map of a previously uncharted section of the seabed. Several private companies also joined the hunt, one of them being Futureunity. Their ship Seabed Constructor was fitted with 8 autonomous underwater vehicles that could scan the ocean floor for 24 hours a day. But despite these extensive efforts, the main body of the aircraft wasn't found. The search was not entirely in vain, though, as it led to some unexpected discoveries. During the intensive underwater search, 2 shipwrecks were found, giving researchers an unprecedented look into maritime history. In addition to the official search efforts, there have been many private and crowd-funded initiatives. Satellite imaging companies release their images to the public, allowing thousands of people to join in the search by scouring the images for any signs of aircraft debris. But despite these gargantuan efforts, the main wreckage of MH370 remains undiscovered, as of my knowledge, cut off in September 2021. However, this doesn't mean the search is over. The quest for MH370 has seen moments of hope, disappointment, and surprise. It's a testament to human resilience and our relentless pursuit of truth, an endeavor marked by international collaboration and the drive to solve one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. With every passing day, new technologies and strategies are being considered, all with the hope that one day the mystery of MH370 will be solved. But what exactly was the root cause of the disappearance? Investigators have come up with a few different theories. One of the most controversial and intriguing theories centers around the pilot Zahari Ahmad Shah. He allegedly deliberately diverted the plane from its course and flew it to a remote location, possibly for personal or political reasons. The theory has been supported by some evidence, but also has counter-challenges. The pilot hijacking theory is based on the assumption that Zahari Ahmad Shah was the only person who had control over the plane's systems and movement. He was also said to have intentionally switched off the communication and tracking devices, changed the flight path, and eventually crashed the plane into the southern Indian Ocean. But what evidence exists for these claims? Well, first, the flight simulator found in Zahari's home had routes similar to the one taken by MH370, including landing at a remote island in the Indian Ocean. This could indicate that Zahari had planned and practiced the diversion beforehand and had a specific destination in mind. Second is the lack of communication or distress signals from the cockpit, which could suggest that Zahari disabled or silenced them to avoid detection or interference. The last words heard from the cockpit were "Goodnight Malaysian 370," which some have interpreted as a farewell message from Zahari. Another piece of evidence is the erratic flight path and altitude changes that were recorded by military and satellite data, which could indicate that Zahari was trying to evade radar coverage or confuse air traffic controllers. The plane also made several turns that required manual input rather than following a pre-programmed route. And the fourth piece of evidence is the possible motive or state of mind of Zahari, who was reportedly facing marital problems, political dissatisfaction, and mental health issues. Some have speculated that Zahari was depressed, suicidal, or radicalized, and that he wanted to make a statement or end his life in a dramatic way. However, the pilot hijacking theory also faces many challenges and criticisms, such as 1. The lack of conclusive evidence or motive for Zahari's actions. There is no proof that Zahari actually used the flight simulator data or that he had any personal or political grievances that would drive him to commit such an act. His family and friends have denied that he had any signs of mental instability or radicalization and have described him as a professional and respected pilot with no history of odd behavior. Secondly, there is the difficulty and risk of executing such a complex and covert operation. Zaharie would have to overcome several technical and logistical hurdles, such as bypassing security systems, locking out his co-pilot, avoiding detection by military or civilian authorities, managing fuel consumption, and landing or crashing the plane in a remote area without leaving any trace. And third, there are alternative explanations for the plane's disappearance. There are other theories that could account for the plane's movements and fate, such as a fire or electrical failure, a depressurization or hypoxia event, a cyber hijacking, or a shoot-down. These theories do not require Zaharie's involvement or intentionality and could explain some of the anomalies or inconsistencies in the data. And there is an even more disturbing theory about the MH370 disappearance. For this, imagine this: a passenger plane with 239 people on board suddenly vanishes from the sky, leaving no trace or clue behind. How could this happen in our technological world where every movement and communication is monitored and recorded? How could a huge metal bird fly for hours without being detected or intercepted by anyone? Well, some claim there is only one possible answer: cyber hijacking. This theory claims that MH370 was remotely hacked or taken over by a hostile entity, such as terrorists, rogue states, or even the US military. This entity could have used sophisticated methods to spoof the satellite data, jam the radar signals, or install malware on the plane's systems. They could have then controlled the plane's movements and actions, diverting it from its original course and flying it to a secret location or crashing it into the ocean. But why would anyone do such a thing? What would be their motive or goal? Turns out there are many possible scenarios, such as 1. A terrorist attack. Maybe MH370 was hijacked by a terrorist group who wanted to use it as a weapon of mass destruction or as a bargaining chip for their demands. Maybe they planned to crash it into a strategic target such as a nuclear plant, a military base, or a city. Maybe they wanted to create fear and chaos in the world or to send a message to their enemies. 2. A political diversion. Maybe MH370 was hijacked by a state actor who wanted to distract attention from their own actions or interests. Maybe they wanted to create a diversion from a conflict or a crisis, such as the Russian annexation of Crimea, which happened around the same time as the plane's disappearance. Maybe they wanted to provoke or blame another country, such as China, Malaysia, or the US. And 3. A military experiment. Maybe MH370 was hijacked by the US military, who wanted to test their capabilities or technologies. Maybe they wanted to see how far they could go with their cyber warfare skills, or how well they could evade detection or interception. Maybe they wanted to study the plane's systems or passengers, or to retrieve something valuable from the cargo. And interestingly, these scenarios are not mutually exclusive. Maybe there was more than one entity involved, or maybe there was a double cross or a betrayal. Maybe there was a hidden agenda or a twist that we don't know about. The possibilities are endless. But how plausible are these theories? How feasible is it to hack a plane and take over its controls? Well, according to some experts, it is not impossible. In fact, some have claimed that they have done it themselves. One of them is Chris Roberts, a cybersecurity researcher who claimed that he hacked into an airplane's entertainment system and briefly took control of one of its engines in 2015. He said he did it to expose the vulnerabilities of the aviation industry and to warn them of the potential dangers. Another one is Hugo Tesso, a former commercial pilot and security consultant who demonstrated how he could remotely hijack an airplane using an Android app and a radio transmitter in 2013. He said he did it to show how easy it was to exploit the flaws in the plane's communication protocols and software. These claims, however, have been met with skepticism and criticism by some authorities and experts who said that they were exaggerated or unrealistic. They argued that hacking into an airplane's systems would require much more than just an app or a transmitter, and that there were many safeguards and countermeasures in place to prevent such attacks. However, other experts have acknowledged that there are indeed some risks and gaps in the aviation security system, and that more research and regulation are needed to address them. They warn that cyber attacks on planes could become more common and sophisticated in the future, and that we should be prepared for them. Another shocking theory that's been proposed to explain the disappearance of MH370 is that the plane was accidentally or intentionally shot down by a missile or a fighter jet, either as a result of a military exercise gone wrong, a mistaken identity, or a cover-up operation. Some of the main arguments for the shoot-down theory are: 1. The military exercise. Some experts have claimed that MH370 was shot down during a joint Thai-US military training exercise in the South China Sea, which coincided with the plane's disappearance. This could have been a result of a miscommunication, a malfunction, or a human error. A former French airline director, Marc Dugain, claimed that he had seen satellite images of unidentified aircraft in the area at the time of MH370's disappearance, and that he had received threats from anonymous sources warning him not to pursue this theory. 2. The mistaken identity. Some have speculated that MH370 was shot down by a state actor who mistook it for a hostile or suspicious plane. This could have been due to the plane's deviation from its original course, its silence or loss of communication, or its resemblance to another plane. A British author, Nigel Cawthorne, claimed that MH370 was shot down by US TIE fighters who feared it was heading for their military base in Diego Garcia, an island in the Indian Ocean. He also claimed that the plane's cargo contained sensitive material or personnel that could have attracted attention or hostility. 3. The cover-up operation. Some have alleged that MH370 was shot down by a state actor who wanted to conceal their involvement or responsibility. This could have been due to a political or strategic motive, such as creating a diversion, provoking or blaming another country, or retrieving something valuable from the plane. A French relative of some of the passengers at Ghislain Ouattara claimed that MH370 was shot down by the US Air Force to seize electronic equipment bound for China, and that there was an international cover-up to hide the truth. However, the shot-down theory also faces many challenges and criticisms, such as the lack of conclusive evidence or motive for a shoot-down. There is no proof that any missile or fighter jet was in the vicinity of MH370, or that any state actor had any reason or intention to shoot down the plane. The satellite images and anonymous threats cited by some proponents of this theory have not been verified or corroborated by any official source. And then there is also the difficulty and risk of shooting down a civilian plane and covering it up. Shooting down a passenger plane would require a high level of coordination and authorization and would entail serious legal and diplomatic consequences. Covering up such an act would require a massive and complex conspiracy involving multiple countries and agencies, and would be hard to maintain without any leaks or whistleblowers. But now, a British aeronautical engineer, Richard Godfrey, claims to have cracked the case and pinpointed the exact location of the plane's crash site in the Indian Ocean. Using a revolutionary aviation tracking technology and combining different datasets that were previously kept separate, he believes he has found the final resting place of MH370 and its passengers. But how did he do it? What is his evidence? And what are the implications of his findings? Godfrey is actually not a newcomer to the MH370 investigation. He has been involved in several independent research groups that have been analyzing various aspects of the plane's disappearance, such as its flight path, its satellite communications, its debris drift, and its possible impact scenarios. He has also developed a software tool called Weak Signal Propagation Reporter Network, or WSPRnet, which uses radio signals to track aircraft movements across the globe. He claims that this tool can detect planes that are not visible to radar or satellite systems, and that it can provide more accurate and reliable information than other methods. Using WSPRnet, Godfrey was able to reconstruct the flight path of MH370 from its last known position over the South China Sea to its presumed endpoint in the southern Indian Ocean. He then cross-referenced this data with other sources, such as Boeing performance data, Inmarsat satellite data, oceanographic floating debris drift data, and debris analysis. By doing so, he was able to narrow down the search area to a specific spot in the Indian Ocean, about 1,933 kilometers west of Perth, Australia, at 33.177 degrees south, 95.300 degrees east. He estimates the plane crashed into the water at a high speed and a steep angle, breaking up into many pieces and sinking to a depth of about 4,000 meters. Godfrey is confident that his calculations are correct and that his theory is consistent with all the available evidence. He has published his report online and shared it with the relevant authorities and experts. He hopes that his findings will prompt a new search and provide answers to the many unanswered questions about the disaster. He also hopes that his findings will give closure to the next of kin of the victims who have been waiting for so long for some news or clues about their loved ones. He said, "We'll be able to give closure to the next of kin and answers to the flying public and the aviation industry on exactly what happened with MH370 and how we prevent that in the future." Godfrey's theories, however, are not without challenges or criticisms. Some have questioned his methodology, his assumptions, his data sources, and his conclusions. Some have claimed that his theory is not new or original, but rather a refinement or modification of previous theories. Some have also pointed out that his theory still needs to be verified or tested by independent experts or authorities. Nevertheless, Godfrey's theory is also not without support or praise. Some have welcomed his findings as a breakthrough and a game-changer in the MH370 investigation. Some have applauded his efforts and skills as a researcher and engineer. And some have also expressed their hope and optimism that his theory will lead to a new search and a final resolution of the mystery.